everyone, this is the Ginger Cat. Hey guys, Catherine the Husky here. Hi everyone, it's Ginger. Hey everyone, Ginger back. Hello everyone. Hello everybody. Hey guys, it's Ginger. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It is your friend Kenna, and I am coming to you today a day early because today, January 23rd, 2025, is a very special day for me. Today is the 10-year anniversary of me beginning this LPSTube journey. That is right, you are officially looking at a veteran LPS tuber of a whole decade, and if you don't believe me, you can look in my channel description and check for yourself. I know, it's crazy. A video idea that's been rolling around in my head for a while is actually looking back and reminiscing on some of my old videos to teach you guys a couple lessons that I've learned from my own mistakes. So today we're going to go ahead and take a look at every LPS series I have ever made or attempted to make. First and foremost, we are really going to reel it back 9 years to be exact on January 24th, 2015 when I released my first ever LPS series, LPS Tears. This series followed the title characters Catherine, Taylor, Chloe, Kira, and Aaliyah as they went upon their quest to achieve popularity at the start of their 5th grade year with a side romance plot involving a character named Jake. Now, although of course I have some grace with myself because I was 12 when I made this series and it was my first venture into the creative space, I will say there are a lot of critiques to be made about this series. First and foremost, this series was an author insert, and you should never make an author insert. A, it makes you more liable to make a Mary Sue character, and B, when you make an author insert and you base your whole story around that, most likely you're going to pull in other real people, which is what I did. Every single character in LPS Tears was based off of a real person that I knew in real life. But if we're being technical about this series and what you could learn from my mistakes, I would say I have a lot of technical errors in this series, particularly the editing style. The title screens were quite lackluster, the video quality itself was poor, and the editing just in general wasn't very good. Another big thing I'd mention about this series is that I filmed with very high camera angles, and I wouldn't recommend doing that, and I shouldn't have done it in the first place, but at the time I filmed with an iPad. And fun fact, since I filmed on my floor and because of the way iPads are built, I couldn't get the angle that I wanted. I also did not script this series whatsoever or plan it one bit. I just sat down on the floor, pulled out my iPad, and started recording. I think the only positive thing I can say about this series is that it really inspired me and made me want to keep on creating, and I'm pretty impressed with the sets that I was able to make at 12 years old with just some craft paper in the back of my Justice lockers. The next series I ever made was a 1-episode pilot published in February of 2015 titled LPS Help Needed. This story followed a couple title characters that really didn't stick out to me, and it had a subplot involving one character murdering another. But aside from that interesting subplot with the planned murder, it was just like any other popular or high school drama type series. The only thing to really learn from this pilot is not to shoot an entire episode within the same scene or room. Unless in doing so, you would convey a very specific theme, maybe there's some kind of feeling that you're trying to carry to that viewer that can only be carried through that modality, I really wouldn't recommend doing that. The main reason being, if a scene takes place in one room and you're looking in this one room with these same two characters for an entire 20 minutes straight, honestly, you're gonna get bored, and I think you're gonna click off the video. The next series I ever created, which I think, don't quote me, I think I actually ended up finishing it, was LPS Chain, and this was a Five Nights at Freddy's themed LPS miniseries. Fun fact, this series was actually based off a fan fiction that I had written, and I actually used the fan fiction as a script in a sort of way, which is one positive point that I'll give myself, because the entire time I filmed this series, I already knew the beginning, the middle, and the end, and this enabled me to do a much better job with LPS Chain than I had any prior series. However, this series about a couple friends trying to survive Five Nights at Freddy's is not immune of its issues, and I think the biggest offense that this series made is the lighting. I understand what I was going for, I know what I was trying to do, but objectively speaking, the scenes were all just way too stinking dark. The viewers could not see a thing. I think with this miniseries, I saw some of the same issues that I had with a lot of my previous series just involving the camera work in general. I think there are a lot of examples of very bad angles in this series where it's like my entire hand and my hand is just like the whole shot and it's like, McKenna, why did you do that? However, notably, this series was my first ever shot at making LPS nail polish customs. Actually, I lied. I just did some research off camera. I think this might have been the era of, worse yet, the washable marker customs. But either way, this was my first stab at customs. This next series is the predecessor to what eventually became the LPS series I had worked the hardest on and actually did stimulate most of my channel growth. And I am talking about LPS Creepypasta Hunters. This series follows the two title characters, Kira and Crystal Winter, as they go to Slender Mansion and talk to the creepypasta characters. Why did I do this? I don't know, but 4.4K of you guys watched this shit. Okay, anyways, I digress, but I think this may have been my first series to have ever featured a title sequence, so that's a fun fact. This series featured a lot of nail polish customs and was predominantly filmed on my blue carpet, and this series starts the era of McKenna filming on her disgusting blue carpet for multiple years, and for some reason nobody told me I shouldn't do that. The biggest issue with this series, actually, which only lasted 2 episodes, was scripting. However, I will give myself a point because it was at this time I started trying to make good thumbnails. Were they good? Absolutely not. But I was trying, and that's a tip. You want a good thumbnail for your series. However, I eventually scrapped this series in favor of a better idea, or so I thought it was a better idea, and this series that I'm about to mention, as awful as it is, as much as I hate it, and as much as I would recommend it to absolutely nobody, is my baby. This was my creative baby, and I am, of course, talking about LPS Fang. This series is another creepypasta concept, and it follows the main character Vendetta and her friend, who are both really interested in creepypasta and trying to summon them and all of that good stuff. And Vendetta is selected to be a proxy, and then the chaos ensues from there for another 20-something episodes. I have never committed myself to a series like I did with LPS Fang. I'm so serious. I worked on this for, I think, over a year even. Above all, the biggest issue with this series would be the plot holes of it all. I did not plot a single thing, and somehow I stretched this series out for over 20 episodes before I eventually gave up on it. Despite all the issues with this series, I put a lot of effort into it, and in my heart, I stepped up my game. I did start incorporating a lot of really fun dynamic scenes and a lot of customs. Of course, they were nail polish customs. They didn't look any good, but hey, I started using customs. This series was a serious offender of not only having a confusing plotline where one time the character was the mother and then in the next episode that character was a friend and then in the next episode the same LPS came in and was someone completely different, but it also was a very serious offender of having the entire 15-minute episode shot within the same set. Oh my gosh, no, so boring. The pacing of the story was an absolute disaster, on top of it being very difficult to follow, and that's what ultimately led me to give up on this series. I just didn't do any writing for it, and eventually I got to a point where I just didn't know what should come next. This series really emphasizes the importance of both scripting, planning, and understanding who your characters are. Lasting for one season consisting of 25 episodes, LPS Fang, despite being an absolute disaster, is my proudest creation because I was so passionate about it, and I'm very proud of what it meant to me at the time. Which is the nice way of saying it's garbage, but a 12-year-old little girl made it with a fire in her heart and the desire to make something good. And she failed, but I mean, she tried, and thumbs up for the effort. The next series I ever worked on also ended up being a one-episode pilot released in April of 2016, and this series was Forever Stranded. Forever Stranded came out right after LPS Fang, and while I don't remember this part of my life very vividly because I had a lot of things going on that you don't talk about on the internet, I will say I think that this was my attempt at an LPS Fang remaster. This series did come with a fun twist, however, in the sense that this series, instead of following one proxy, actually followed a concept within the creepypasta community called the proxy trials, and it's essentially this idea, all of the prospective proxies, so all of the people that Slenderman may or may not select to be a proxy, actually get sent into these death games. So think Squid Game in a way, and then the remaining survivor or the remaining two survivors end up becoming proxies of Slenderman. This series, had I gone through with it, I think could have potentially been better than LPS Fang, and I say that because this series actually was entirely scripted, and I know this because Forever Stranded was actually based on an entire 180,000 word manuscript I had written for a fanfiction. Although my biggest piece of advice following this series would be not to use a manuscript as your script, mainly because a manuscript is not adapted for screenplay and contains a lot of extra gunk that will just make filming a headache for you and that you don't need. And also it isn't formatted in a way that makes it easy for you to use at all. Furthermore, the manuscript is not parsed out into episodes, and therefore, while you think you might be looking at a 20-episode, 2-season-long series, you might actually be looking at something much bigger or much smaller, but you don't know until you sit down to film. At this point, I took a couple months off from making LPS series and decided, you know what, I'm gonna try and plot a little more, and eventually I came back in August and released LPS 50 Days in Animes. This series was also based off of a fanfiction, but it was not based off of one that I had written, and I did not ever credit the original creator of the concept, which is a big no-no, so the biggest thing you can learn from this series is actually just to give credit where it's due. Now, conceptually, I actually have a lot of good things to say about this series, and the main reason why is because the way that this series was to work is that it was going to be about 3 title characters, and they were going to wake up every day in a different, fictional anime universe. What I like about that concept is that it is episodic in nature, and what's so cool about it is that it's a lot harder for you to get stuck or to get into a creative rut because every episode is going to follow a different universe with different characters. So instead of creating one big, daunting, cohesive plot line, you're creating many plot lines, which of course you would still have to eventually tie in to create a bigger theme altogether. But this was a lot easier to work with conceptually than any of the other series that I had devised through the years. And as a bonus, this was my first ever collaborative series and featured the voice talents of some friends that I actually do still have and talk to regularly in real life, and I really care about those people, and it was such a fun experience to get to work on something with them. Oh, and as a bonus, this was my first series where I ever used an actual script that was meant to be adapted for screen instead of going based off a manuscript, which is a thumbs up. After 50 days, I took a serious break from making LPS series, and I eventually decided to myself, okay, if I'm gonna make a series, I'm gonna do it right. I'm gonna spend over a year just planning for it before the public even knows I have something cooking. And it's gonna come out, and it's gonna be perfect. And although I never released it, LPS Outlast is probably the best and most well-developed concept I had ever conjured in my mind. Outlast was so different from any other project that I had ever worked on because A, I spent the most time actually planning it. Fun fact, I spent over a month just working on the set designs, but B, actually moving into the set designs, this series featured the best sets I had ever handcrafted on my own. The jump in quality, and I'm not saying LPS Outlast was of highest quality, but the jump in quality between 50 Days and Outlast is insane. If you put them side by side, you can tell that so much more effort was put into Outlast, and I'm very proud of that. And while I'm sad it never ended up releasing to the public, I think it was a blessing in disguise, and there are reasons why I chose actively not to release it after all the work I'd spent on it. There isn't actually a lot with this series that I would nitpick or critique. I actually really like a lot of the work that I did on this, but my biggest thing, again, is actually camera angles. I just hate, even in the official teaser #1, you can see some weird shots, and I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, this could look so much better if you just film at eye level with the LPS, dude. But again, even this was before I started filming with my phone. But what I will say is, again, I am very proud of LPS Outlast, and I really think I put the work in for this. I spent so much time, months, just developing my characters, and I had a cast of, I want to say maybe even 15 characters, and they were all very well developed. I actually knew my characters very well. The concept was kind of a blend of the Forever Stranded series with no creepypasta concept. It was going to develop into a Lord of the Flies situation where you have a bunch of grade school kids who don't really know how to survive on their own. You throw them in the woods, they're lost, they cannot find their way out, and they all turn on each other, and it gets really crazy and gory and ridiculous. Which may sound kind of boring on the surface, but I had so many subplots cooking up in my head, it was insane. The series was going to be gut-wrenching, cruel, and it was absolutely not going to hold the viewer's hand. I was going to rip your heart out and feel really good about doing it. This series, while being completely scripted and ready to film, got scrapped at the last minute because, in all honesty, I ended up waking up one morning and thinking to myself, this is just too dark. I just can't put this out there. Although today it would have been a different story, I think at the time, because this was like 7 years ago, LPSTube was not quite yet ready to transition into more adult content covering very serious topics, and I would have probably been the first person to try and tread those waters had I officially released Outlast at the time, and honestly, I did not want to be the person to open that door because that also puts you on a pedestal to receive a lot of backlash. I think all in all with Outlast, it's actually probably a better example of what to do than what not to do. I spent months developing my concept and characters, over a month developing just the set. I was gradually releasing teasers as I had already had the script written and everything planned out. I think that everything that I did for Outlast was quote-unquote correct on paper, but it just never came to light. Anyways, before I clip you to the outro, if you have any questions about any of the series that I had worked on over the years, I may or may not have an answer. I'll be honest, these were very old projects, and again, just the time in my life I don't remember all that well, but I might have an answer for you, so feel free to ask. And if you happen to remember any of these series, like if you watched my channel a very long time ago, please let me know. One time I met a person in real life who I had talked to, and I mentioned that I used to do LPSTube because this was kind of during that time where I'd quit LPSTube and I tried to make my channel into a personal channel. And this person told me that they remembered me and that they had watched LPS Fang in real time, like as it was coming out and as I was making it. And I like played it off, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I totally went home and sobbed because I was like, that is the most incredible thing, that I had reached a real person and then met them again in the wild. That was the most insane thing that had ever happened to me. So if you remember any of these old series, even if you remember hating them, because I don't blame you, like, let me know. I'm so curious. Thank you guys so much for watching and sharing this special day with me. I hope you found this video entertaining and potentially helpful. If you did, please leave a comment and let me know, or leave a like, and if you like my content but aren't yet subscribed, please consider subscribing, and I will see you again very, very soon. Love ya! Bye-bye!